Thanks folks for signing up and deciding to spend about a half hour with yours truly on how to reduce pain and improve your health and not be a lazy stoner. So my name's Dave Morrow. I'm a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces and currently hold a bachelor's degree in biochemistry, and wanted to talk to you today about the benefits of cannabis as a therapy. So before we get started, we need to look at some of the legal stuff, and this is for both me and you. So before we get started, this educational seminar is in no way representative of medical advice. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are for personal information only. Morrow Consulting and Training, Inc. is not responsible for any effects that may occur after the consumption of any cannabis products listed in this presentation. So this training is for you if you're experiencing regular aches and pains, you're a Canadian Armed Forces veteran with a service-related injury, you're dealing with higher levels of anxiety, you've got injuries that slow you down, and or you're frustrated, always having to rely on big pharma for therapeutic solutions to some of your ailments. So we're going to do what we used to do, and both of you guys here are military veterans. Oh, sorry, Michelle, correction. But we're going to do an initial survey here, or what I used to call a TKT, a threshold knowledge test. And I'm going to share that here with you guys. So just give me a quick minute to share a poll with you. 3-question poll, super simple. It's going to pop up on your screen. And if you can answer that in the most honestly and quickly and most timely manner possible, that would be great. So this will give us just a little baseline as to where everybody's coming with respects to their knowledge of cannabis and what their reasons are and what your reason is for showing up to a seminar like this. All right, so not very scientific because we have a small sample size. However, what's cool is that if we're just looking at things like, have you ever consumed any cannabis? Yes, no, we're split 50-50. Add me in there, yes. So, okay, we've got more yeses than nos. Do you know the difference between CBD and THC? Okay, cool, yes. And of course, I do as well. And what intrigues you about cannabis therapy? So anxiety relief and sleep improvement. And we also have athletic performance and pain management there as well. And if we had a bigger sample size, I'm sure we'd have some people there as well. So thanks for answering the poll, guys. Much appreciated. So carrying on, we're going to look a little bit more in depth inside the training and what I'm going to reveal here. So essentially, we're going to learn how you can reduce your joint pain, reduce your anxiety, and improve your overall fitness simply by learning how to use cannabis to your benefit. What you'll often hear people say related to cannabis is that, isn't weed just for lazy stoners? I don't want to get addicted. Isn't this a gateway drug? And I can't be stoned all day. We've got a job, wife, and kids to take care of. So we're going to address all of this and more in our presentation today. Now, I grabbed this as a quote from one of the founding fathers of the United States of America, but this isn't exactly what he said. Okay, this is paraphrasing something he had in one of his letters, but here's the gist of it. So if people let the government decide what foods they eat and what medicines they take, their bodies will soon be in as sorry a state as are the souls of those who live under tyranny. Okay, so this is a good guiding quote as to how we're going to look at the medicine, which is cannabis, during this presentation. Ultimately, what we want is for you to have a good grip and for you to make your own informed decisions. So who am I? I'm a nutrition and fitness coach, Canadian Armed Forces veteran of 15 years, and I'm a family man. So me crushing it in the gym when gyms were still a thing. Obviously me on patrol here in a galaxy far, far away in Afghanistan many, many years ago, and me more recently with my awesome family. So my story is pretty straightforward. Born and raised in Montreal, still live in Montreal. was a reservist and always was a reservist here in Montreal with the Canadian Grenadier Guards. Did all my studying here as well. Deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. That's where I got injured. I blew out my back and my knee. And on return home, I fell back on my education, which was in teaching. I got married, settled down, as you can tell, obviously, from the last slide. And my injuries just became worse and worse and worse. And I realized I wasn't good to go. And I hated the feeling that the opioids that were prescribed for me made me feel. It was unpleasant. And I knew I couldn't use those long-term because of the addictive properties of opioids. So I said to myself, I can't live the rest of my life like this. I need to figure something else out. This isn't long-term sustainable. And I committed to accepting that I clearly don't have all the answers. And what I'm doing and being prescribed isn't working. So I decided that the only way to fix myself was to seek help and wisdom from anywhere but the Canadian Armed Forces. And so I thought, is there someone out there that can help? And the answer was resoundingly yes. So first off, I started with my body and I found a great coach, and he still remains my coach to this day. And on top of that, he is actually one of the two other coaches, part of Dave Morrow PT, LP Boudreau, who is just a savage when it comes to coaching and understands his clients extremely well. And that's why I keep him on the payroll. And I also became obsessed with improving my health at a cellular level. So I found a great company to help me in my cannabis journey, which is right here in Canada, in New Brunswick, actually. And that got me on this path. And since then, in over 5 years, I've had only one back flare up, which was not nearly as bad as my major one that occurred over 5 years ago. And I've completed just recently the Ironman in August. That's me here on the right, crossing the finish line. And have done 3 CrossFit Opens, and I've also begun playing the sport, the Irish national sport of hurling. And if you've ever seen hurling, it is brutal. You're running and swinging wooden bats around, and it's like baseball on crack. And I love it. And I would not be able to do all this had I not taken my health seriously and started looking at other ways to remedy my issues. So here's what the Army said I was allowed to do the remainder of my days. So lift nothing greater than 10 kilos, take lots of opiates and non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like Tylenol and Advils, and refrain from standing, sitting, and walking for extended periods of time. So basically, sit down, lie down, shut up, and suck it up for the rest of your life. Now, obviously, yeah, that's just not doable for me. I was only 30 years old when I got this diagnosis, and this exemplifies exactly how I felt. This can't be it. So I decided to come up with a new plan, and I called it the long game body system. And it consists of 3 phases. The first one is awareness, and then the next one is inflammation reduction, and lastly, corrective exercise. We're only going to look today at inflammation reduction because this is where cannabis therapy comes into play. So in the awareness phase is, where is your bobo? Where are you hurt? And when does it hurt? So for me, it was extended periods of standing, and really any activity that required me to walk for any period of time more than 5-10 minutes, or sit down for 5-10 minutes. So you could see how this could end up causing a bit of havoc for my daily routine. The next phase, the inflammation reduction phase. So this is where cannabis comes into play. So finding out the dosage and frequency protocol is really part of the journey, and it's different for everybody. Additionally, I include mindfulness training and self-myofascial release training. And the self-myofascial release training is something that I go over extensively in my book, The Nimble Warrior, which is available on Amazon. Additionally, there's a video course that's going to be accompanying this book, which is going to be released at the end of November. So these are the 3 components of the inflammation reduction phase, and we're going to be focusing on the cannabis part of this phase today. Lastly, we have corrective exercise phase, which is establishment of a baseline movement pattern. And then that includes squatting, hinging, pulling, pushing. And then once we get that established, then we look at increasing the volume, typically using our body weight in the correct positions, and then eventually increasing our time under tension. So therefore adding a bit of weight with improved movement patterns so that we can start really getting the results that we want. Again, these are all covered in my book, The Nimble Warrior, and in any of my training programs if you go to davemorrow.net/training programs. So where's all this going? So cannabis use can lead to maximizing your athletic and productivity potential by reducing chronic inflammation. How do I know this? Not only from the research, but from my own personal experience. And that's where I'm going to focus a lot of the effort today. So let's take a quick look at the science. My favorite. It's awesome to see you here, as you know. So folks, Em's is a old friend of mine. Hey, he's an old friend of mine. Thanks for showing up and listening. We spent a lot of time in science class together in grade 10 and 11. So awesome to see you here. And now we're going to be looking at cannabis, and this is the molecule. So this is where I nerd out. So THC, tetrahydrocannabidiol, is the actual name of it. We can just abbreviate to THC today. And here's just some bullet point facts. And ultimately, the goal here is just to give you a broader awareness. So the word cannabis refers to all products derived from the plant Cannabis sativa. The word marijuana refers to parts of products from the plant Cannabis sativa that contain substantial amounts of THC. If it doesn't contain a lot of THC, I believe it's below 0.03%, we can classify it as hemp. So we can use it for industrial processes, and we can use it in rope and all kinds of different things, fibers that can be used for clothing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, eating, you name it. So that's the differentiation. It's still the same plant, but we can, depending on the genus and how it's cultivated and how it's grown, we'll have different varying levels of THC. So THC is a substance that primarily is responsible for the effects of marijuana on a person's mental state. The main cannabinoids, so that's the group of chemical compounds that come from this plant, are THC and cannabidiol. So cannabidiol is what we call CBD, and that's how we'll refer to it for the rest of this presentation. So besides THC and CBD, there are over 100 other cannabinoids that have been identified. The main ones that we're obviously going to look at today are THC and CBD. So Sativa and Indica is probably something, even if you're not a cannabis consumer, are at least somewhat aware of. And those are species variants that may have different effects when you consume them. And they all act on the endocannabinoid system. So this is where I really enjoy the science, because it's a whole system. We're going to look at it in the next few slides, what this actually means to be talking about the endocannabinoid system. And down below here, we have just the two different molecules of THC and CBD. If you were to look at the chemical formula of both THC and CBD, they're exactly the same. The only difference is these are what we call isomers. So they're structurally slightly different. And you're going to see this is what gives you the different physiological effects just on some different conformation of the molecule itself. So I pulled up this slide because it's important to address, if you do have experience with any sort of marijuana products, any kind of THC products, you may have heard, oh, I really enjoy having a sativa during the day because it gives me a lot of energy. I feel dialed in, I feel focused. And I consume my indica-based products at night because I want to kind of chill out and have that typical stoner buzz going on. This was mainly anecdotal, and the research, now that scientists are able to do double-blind studies on these two compounds, are noticing that these are mostly unfounded. So it really comes down to each and every individual's personal response metabolically and physiologically to these different species variants. So typically sativa was used to stimulate yourself. So stimulate your brain, that is. So boost energy, eases depression, increase focus, and indica was used to relax. So acts as a sedative, release pain, and stimulates appetite. But the science isn't really proving this out. And it really exemplifies the point that this is going to be an individual approach to the usage of cannabis products. So what's the endocannabinoid system? Well, it's inside us all. We have this incredible system that scientists discovered a few years ago that allows us to not only use, but secrete internally these cannabinoid molecules that have these receptors on basically every organ in the body that allows for proper homeostasis and for proper functioning of our entire body. So this is kind of mind blowing, and scientists are still discovering things every day. There's a lot of things that they don't still know, but mainly we know it plays a role in regulating a bunch of functions and processes, and I have them listed here. So sleep, mood, appetite, memory, and reproduction and fertility, to name a few. And the main endocannabinoid receptors are CB1 and CB2, and they're located, the CB1 receptors are mostly found in the central nervous system, and CB2 receptors are mostly found in your peripheral nervous system, and especially in the immune cells. So if we look at this logically, we have these receptors that are able to receive these endocannabinoids. They're there for a reason, and they're located on these very important parts of the body. So you can come to the logical conclusion that if you have more of these in your system, you may have a better functioning set of organs. And that's what we're going to be looking at. So here's just a graphical representation of where these receptors are located. You can see here, the ones in green are the CB1 receptors, the ones in black are the CB2 receptors, and the ones in teal are the CB1 and CB2 receptors. This is going to be relevant very soon when we start talking about the different compounds, so the different CBD molecules and THC molecules. So I'm just going to back up a sec here, folks, now that you've seen where they're actually located. So just to give you a better, broader context as to how CBD and these different receptors work, CBD acts on your CB1 and CB2 receptors in your body, and they produce positive outcomes in the sense that it doesn't bind directly to these receptors, but rather affects them indirectly by activating another set of receptors that's still not clearly known, that control essential functions like body temperature, pain, perception, and inflammation. So CBD can also boost how much anandamide, which is this really interesting molecule, it's called the bliss molecule, that contributes to neural generation of motivation and pleasure. Wow. So that's pretty cool stuff. So while there still isn't a complete and full picture of what the endocannabinoid system does, researchers do know it helps fine-tune most of your important physiological function. Discovering the ECS, the endocannabinoid system, showed a biological basis for plant cannabinoids' therapeutic effects, and has gained renewed interest in CBD and cannabis as a medicine. And so some researchers that believe that insomnia and other sleep disorders are related to an ECS dysfunction. So according to the CDC, around 50 to 70 million adults in the US have wakefulness or sleep disorder. So not only is inadequate sleep uncomfortable, it can also affect your safety and health adversely. And I go over this in great detail, actually, on one of the episodes of my podcast with Dr. Kirk Parsley, who's a former Navy SEAL and worked with Navy SEALs to unbreak their sleep and to get them healthy again. So a really good episode, and I highly recommend you. And when you don't get enough sleep, it decreases your alertness and physical performance and impairs cognitive abilities and memory. And then researchers essentially believe that the CB1 receptors contribute to the regulation of sleep. So research shows an increase in endocannabinoid signaling and CB1 receptor activation within the central nervous system, promoting sleep-inducing effects. When the CB1 receptors are activated, it triggers the release of adenosine. This is a sleep-inducing molecule, and a blockage of CB1 receptors and stimulates a chemical release that maintain wakefulness. So all this to say is that the interaction between things like the CBD molecule and these receptors is having a positive effect, and it's allowing for homeostasis, so the balance within your body to actually happen. And so I know this could probably be a lot to take in. It feels like you're probably back at school, but I wanted to give you that really scientific context so that you can understand where we're moving towards with respects to your health and improving your health, and using it as a tool for just the toolbox that you can deploy as a potential therapeutic moving forward. So the research here, there's a ton right now of really good research coming out, because It's legal here in Canada, and in a lot of states in the US, it's becoming decriminalized and legalized. So therefore, the restrictions on conducting research are also being lifted. What that means is we're going to have a wealth of information and research coming out. So I just highlighted just 3 here, but if you'd like a list of over 700 articles that are excellent to read and related to things like cancer and all kinds of different ailments, just let me know, and I'll forward that off to you. Not a problem, along with the other email with this recording as well. So some of the research says, we have cannabinoids as novel anti-inflammatory drugs, and this is exactly how I use my CBD. I use it like Advil. And just a little clip here: cannabinoids suppress inflammatory response and subsequently attenuate disease symptoms. So this is a study that was published in the NIH, so the National Institutes of Health in the States. Great article if you want to get into it. Additionally, cannabis compounds, and this is really topical because we're talking about COVID-19, they exhibit anti-inflammatory activity in vitro, so within a human, and reduces the inflammation in lung epithelial cells and pro-inflammatory activity in macrophages. So that's really interesting. Now, there hasn't been a double-blind study on this. This is just based on actually looking at people that do consume CBD-based products, and their response to COVID-19. So a potential other avenue of therapy here for COVID-19, or people that are afflicted by COVID-19 that have the disease. And effects of marijuana on mental health, and this is specific to anxiety. So CBD appears to decrease anxiety at all doses. So whether or not you take a huge dose or a small dose, there does seem to be a significant decrease in anxiety with the participants that were in this study. And I had to point out that the author of this study was Susan A. Stoner. I don't know if this is the internet trolling us, but I had to put that in there. And with all this being said, there's a lot, and there's a mounting evidence, a wealth of evidence that is coming out with respect to the benefits of cannabinoids and cannabis as a medicine, and not just something that is used in popular culture to chill out and have some space cakes and eat some Doritos. There is a lot of research that is coming out that is showing some really major benefits with CBD, especially. Now, one thing I wanted to point out was this was published widely in the mainstream media because it brought to light kind of and critique some assumptions that even I had, was that nationwide US studies report that compared to non-users, cannabis users actually have a lower prevalence of obesity. Now, why is this surprising? Is that the idea that somebody who uses cannabis is usually somebody that's lazy and is probably eating Doritos all the time and probably not in the best shape and probably heavier than the average individual, but that's not what the research has shown. So I put in brackets her. So this is the researcher that was conducting this research. Her team surveyed more than 600 cannabis users living in the United States, where the drug is legal, about their exercise habits, among other health factors. So 4 out of 5 respondents said that they use marijuana right before or after exercising, and those users spent more minutes per week exercising than users who didn't mix the two. And we were shocked, the researcher said. Now, the reason why I wanted to put this in here is because this is what I thought. I thought weed makes you slow and soft. It's for the unmotivated losers. Now, I had no experience with weed up until a few years ago. Like I said earlier, I'd never smoked really anything. I started smoking cigarettes as a stress coping mechanism in Afghanistan, and cigars. But when I came home, I really stopped. I rarely consume anything. So even smoking weed was just not on the radar. But in reality, what happened was, I use now cannabis, especially CBD, almost on the regular. And I don't have any decrease in performance. I've never been so fit in my life, and I'm not attributing it all to CBD, obviously, but it is definitely a part of my toolkit, my toolbox that I use and I deploy on a regular basis. So how did I start? So I went from, I think this is for losers and stoners, to I can't not use this on a regular basis. So I had to slowly begin the journey. So I initially only wanted it to help my back and knee pain. I said, you know what? I know the dangers of using opioids, and therefore I don't want anything to do with them. I also know that if I take non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like Advil and Tylenol, there can be some adverse effects long-term on my liver. So therefore, what's my alternative? And I turned to cannabis. So I took baby steps and I experimented with dosage, concentration, and products. And I realized that also helped regulate my mood and remember what it was like to feel happy. So this comes into play with, my PTSD diagnosis, where for a long period of time, I just wasn't able to experience the highs of highs, like the joy that I typically would feel. And what I noticed once I started consuming THC is like, oh my God, I feel like I did like when I was in my 20s before I deployed, like this joyous kind of feeling where you're just happy, you're just good. And so it opened up another part of my brain that hadn't been accessed for years. And this was great because it also brought a lot more enjoyment, not only to my life, but to my family's life as well. So there are some strong benefits to having that high, which is that psychoactive high that you get from THC. So here's what I do now. Semi-daily, I use a CBD supplement, which is an oil, and I use approximately 1 milliliter of oil. Now, the reason why I do semi-daily is that there is, like any drug, a certain tolerance that gets built up, and I don't want to constantly bump that up. Now, I don't have any research to back that up, other than I noticed that, I could slowly increase my dosage to now where 1 milliliter is the sweet spot. Anything lower, I don't get the desired effect, whereas years ago it did. So that's why I do about semi-daily. Before aerobic activity though, so that's, running, swimming, where it's monostructural, I'm not going to be lifting anything, I take approximately 1 milliliter of CBD oil beforehand. And during my Ironman, I use CBD extensively. And during my training, I used it extensively as well. On high stress days, so days that I either know are coming up or days that are happening and I'm in the middle of it, I'll consume, my 1 liter of CBD oil midday. And then at night, to down regulate myself more, I'll typically take, I have a really good chocolate that's salted, it's delicious. It's got 2.5 milligrams of THC, and I take that about 2 hours before going to bed. It doesn't give me an incredible high, but it definitely down regulates me so that I can get a better sleep and that I can get into that, sleep mode a lot easier. Because if my central nervous system is too jacked up and I can't bring myself down, that lack of sleep then compounds things for me. And then I have, poor days that result in more poor days. And I want to make sure I break that cycle. And smoking or vaping for recreational purposes does happen, obviously. But that's something I do with friends and family, and rather than consume alcohol. So my alcohol consumption is basically fallen off a cliff. And I have a hard time drinking alcohol now because it makes me feel awful, whether I have one drink or 4 drinks. And so I'd much rather consume cannabis now. And here in Quebec, we're lucky enough to have, even cannabis infused drinks now, which I really enjoy as well. Whoops, I want to show my Will Ferrell meme there. So my personal experience is quite simply, I've unlocked a certain level of athletic performance that I hadn't been able to unlock before. And on the 28th of August, I completed the Ironman. And this was a goal I set for myself on a pretty shitty day in Afghanistan. I was sitting on my cot and I was like, man, I got to sort out my life. If I get home, what am I going to do? And I got to do some big things. And one of them was, I'm going to do the Ironman before I'm 40. So I'm 40 now, turned 40 a few weeks ago. So I left it till the last minute, like I normally do for everything. But the reason why I bring this up is that I was a convert, let's say, of training while using CBD. And for the Ironman, I took 3 milliliters total. I took a milliliter per leg. So I took a milliliter for the swim, a milliliter before the bike, and a milliliter before the run. Now, this in no way gives me any kind of euphoric high, but what it does do, and I used it throughout my entire training, is it gave my legs a lightness that I wouldn't get without it. It made me feel like I had more access to oxygen through my lungs, as weird as that sounds. It felt like I was pulling in more oxygen every time I breathed. And additionally, it's a good anti-inflammatory remedy. So the pain in my knee was basically non-existent and my back was non-existent as well. So I found the sweet spot there. And essentially long-term, my my chronic pain is basically non-existent. Now that's also coupled with really good training regimen and being really religious on my training. So I'm not attributing it 100% to THC or CBD by any means, but I've also been able to lose weight a lot easier. I've learned significantly more about myself and how my body works. And, I can deal better with my bad days because I know I have something that can actually help me get there. And it's not alcohol or any other type of medication that comes from a big pharma company. So let's recap here. Cannabis has two main active cannabinoids, THC and CBD. THC is more psychoactive than CBD. Preliminary research has shown that CBD can reduce levels of inflammation and improve sleep quality. Intuitively, cannabis consumers on average are more fit than non-consumers, and there are no hard and fast rules to follow. So this is solely based on the results you get. Okay. So we're not done yet, but folks, if I get from you guys just a little response, can I get a hell yeah in the comments if you guys are tracking and you feel that, hey, CBD, THC, this seems, and you don't have to be totally convinced if you don't want to, right? It's okay. This seems like, hey, this might have some kind of effect and I might benefit from this. Just drop me a hell yeah in the comments. Just get some engagement here. So you guys aren't doodling and looking at your phones. As former teacher Dave Morrow would catch his students wandering off into cyberspace. It's not easy doing these Zoom calls. All right, we got a few here. Awesome. All right, James, Nick, Pat, wicked. So we got a few hell yeahs here. Awesome. All right, guys. So carrying on. So I'm sure you're asking yourself your question, like, if I ever have a minute spark went up you, Dave, I'll give you a shout. Cool, bro. Like, where is this all leading? Well, essentially you have a choice, right? And I want to help you with that choice. You can keep on doing what you're doing. There's nothing stopping you from, carrying on if you're experiencing chronic pain or, if you may have, some PTSD issues, whatever it may be. You can keep on doing your own protocol and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But the other choice is trying this out, trying this type of medication out and viewing it as a medication and not just some recreational drug that can be a tool in your toolbox. And that's all it is. It's a therapeutic that you can safely control with no serious risk of addiction. So what I want to propose to you is if you are a Canadian Armed Forces veteran with a service-related injury, and I'm going to talk about people that are not veterans and don't have a service-related injury next. Okay, so I'm not leaving you guys out. This isn't just for veterans. So at zero cost to you, Veterans Affairs Canada, upon consulting with a qualified nurse practitioner, will approve a medical cannabis prescription, assuming that your service-related injury merits the use of cannabis. So it's a reduction of harm principle. So the Canadian Armed Forces and Veterans Affairs is concerned with opioid use, as you should be as well. If you do consume opioids, this may be a potential avenue to either A, never use them, or B, wean yourself off them. Hence the reason why there is a qualified health practitioner that will guide you through this so that you're not dealing with me. I'm no health practitioner, okay, as I said earlier. So it provides you with a monthly allocation, usually starting at about 3 grams per day. And then you can pick your medical cannabis and that you want every month. It's totally up to you. You're not prescribed a certain type of cannabis. It's really based on what you feel works best for you. And I found what works best for me, and I regularly order it every month. And it'll get delivered to your door 100% for free. So there's absolutely no transaction of cash between anybody here, and you get fully covered by Blue Cross. So I act as your personal consultant, essentially, and guide you whenever you need help. And we never exchange any funds. The way this works is really straightforward. I'm partnered up with a company called Alpha Veterans. They're out of Quebec City. Great group of dudes that help out veterans across Canada, make sure that they get the coverage that they're entitled to, and ensure that their paperwork is done properly for Veterans Affairs. So not only will they support you through your cannabis journey, but they're also providing assistance you may need related to Veterans Affairs, all for free. Now you're probably saying like, wait, there's got to be a catch. Like, how do I get this for free? That's where I work with Alpha Veterans that works with the insurance companies and the licensed producers. And you, as the new patient, still have to order your cannabis. That doesn't come for free to the producer or to the company, which is providing the insurance. And so therefore, that's how our business model works. We deal on the back end, and all you see at the end of the day is your product showing up at your door after clicking on the submit button. And that's that. Okay. Your medical cannabis prescription lasts 6 months. So therefore, there has to be a reevaluation every 6 months, and that's important to know. So to begin, all you need to do is fill in the form. And if you're interested, I can send you this form right now. I'm going to post it in the chat. I'm also going to send this form in the follow-up email that I'll be sending you guys. This is really a simple intake form. And don't forget, the questions on here are very generic. And I'm not a doctor or a nurse, so therefore we do not need to get into your medical history whatsoever. It's really just to ensure that you have you are who you are, and then we start the process from there. And then your medical information will be passed on to the nurse when you get to that stage, and if you get to that stage. So let me just post the link here, and you can click on that. And don't forget, I will be sending that in the email follow-up as well. Okay. Great. So next, for non-veterans or veterans with no service-related injury. So you've got loads of options too. Okay. So typically civilians, right? Or, the overwhelming majority of veterans don't leave with a service-related injury. And with that being said, you wouldn't qualify for the free service from Veterans Affairs, but you can still go on your cannabis journey through a great partnership that I'm really proud to announce as of today, actually, with Brothers in Arms CBD. So this is an American-based company that is run by veterans and that is focused on veterans' health. So Brothers in Arms is a collective of veterans and first responders that believes in taking a stand against big pharma companies. And we believe the best way to do that is providing a safer, more affordable solution to pain and anxiety. So leaving those who serve our countries here in Canada and the US with a quality of life that they truly deserve. Brothers in Arms is dedicated to supporting the veteran community and promoting healthier, purpose-filled lifestyles by providing a full line of the highest quality CBD products out there. So Brothers in Arms exists with the sole purpose of improving the lives of the millions of veterans and first responders that serve us. Point final. So I have just 2 quick testimonials here, video testimonials of individuals that have used the products from Brothers in Arms. And I have to admit, I wouldn't be getting into any partnership with a company if I didn't really believe in their products, and their products are good. So here's the first one.
Guys, Clint Harris here. Just want to give a quick shout out to my buddy Eduardo and his company, Brothers in Arms. The CBD is phenomenal. I used this when I was doing a 24-hour roll-a-thon. So for those who don't know, it's a jiu-jitsu-based event. This is a beautiful product. Love it. Super grateful for you, brother. Thank you so much, Eduardo. And those who have not yet tried it, give it a shot. Check it out.
There we go. And then we have an example of somebody using a balm. BALM. Balm.
Hey guys, I need to tell you about a special product that I found that helps me overcome a lot of the aches and pains that I deal with. 55-year-old former athlete with about 20 plus surgeries. And thankfully, they've put me back together, and I continue to do the things that I enjoy doing. I have been introduced to a CBD company called Brothers in Arms, and they have a CBD balm that has been perfect for me. I use it frequently throughout the day if any ache or pain arises, and it gives me an opportunity to get out and, like I said, do the things that I have done my whole life and I enjoy doing. So if you're looking for something to give you some benefit and some relief and help change the quality of your life back towards the way it used to be, let me recommend this CBD bomb by Brothers in Arms. It is awesome.
As Clint Harris here, she'll get purchased.
Hey guys, I
Sorry,
need
folks.
to tell you about.
So if you'd like to try out their products, you can head to the link that's provided here, and I'll drop that one into the chat as well. It'll also be in the follow-up email that you'll be getting. And just because you're here today, we're also running a promo. So the promo, as you can see, is 30% off with using the code hard to kill. So again, if you head to BNA CBD, and give me a second here as I put this in. There we go. If you head to bnacbd.co, you can find a whole host of a whole wealth of products that they have there, including the balm and including the CBD oil. That is top-notch stuff. They have international shipping across the planet, obviously including Canada, and drop the code hard to kill for 30% discount on that CBD oil. So now this brings us almost to the conclusion. So just for you guys showing up, time is the most precious resource on the planet. I appreciate that. And I appreciate that you're here. I'm going to be sending you a free guide, which is the no pain, all gain cheat sheet that I came up with that you can start using to apply and reduce, any chronic pain you might have or prevent chronic pain that may arise in the future. It's really straightforward 2-page guide that I typically give to my clients, and I'm going to be sending you that 100% free just for showing up today. And then lastly, to sum it all up, one of my favorite quotes that I got from a CrossFit influencer years ago, who has a great channel on how to prepare food when you're an athlete, especially a CrossFit athlete, named Nick Massey. And I don't know if he made this term up himself or if he got it from elsewhere, but I love using it and I'd love to have a shirt made with it. But the quote here is pretty self-explanatory. So it's pay the farm now. So notice how farm is spelled, or pay the farm. Notice how that's spelled later. So either you take care of your health through using really good natural food and products so that you're in control and pay that cost now up front, or you will have substantially greater financial costs to big pharma down the road. So that's just an important bit of wisdom that I live by, and my family lives by, and that I hope you begin to incorporate into your own personal philosophy based on what we've learned here today. So thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. And I'll leave the floor to any questions you might have. And if you have a question, feel free to take yourself off mute and fire away.